This is a Flying Cow production.
Book 1, Water. Book 2, Earth. Book 3, Fire. Long ago, Nickelodeon introduced a series called Avatar: The Last Airbender. It combined great anime-style animation, strong storytelling, heart, and humor. It was great, and everyone that saw it loved it. Until one day, a terrible movie came out which everyone hated. But my co-host Lauren Collins knows none of this because he's never seen the show. And that's why we are watching every episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, because I believe this could be Lauren's new favorite show. Or at least top 20. Well, hello, and welcome back to Comets and Cabbages, the Avatar: The Last Airbender podcast here on The Flying Cow. I, of course, am the Flying Cow himself, Clay Johnson, and I do not have pentapox.
Well, my name's Amanda Van Heil, and I am running away to join the circus.
And I'm Lauren, and thankfully my face is also not covered.
It's good. Good. I've gotten my booster, got my injections. I'm good. All right. Well, we are here today, as we said, talking about another episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, continuing our coverage of Book 2, Earth. But before we get into, our episodes, a lot of times we like to, just kind of waste a little bit of time, just kind of enjoy talking to each other, just kind of, have some fun. But occasionally, there are important things that I think it need to be said. Like our PSA about how I feel about Bobby Flay, things like that are very important for people to know. And there is one such a thing that I wanted to bring up because it has to do with something that is introduced in this episode. And so I would like to just very briefly give everyone a brief lesson in Japanese. Now, I, of course, am not Japanese. I do not speak Japanese fluently. I have a very rudimentary understanding of the language and how it is pronounced. But I will say that, I took one semester of Japanese in college, and I mostly did it because the professor would very often feed us. And it was very good food. But with that, one thing that I have always excelled at when it comes to languages is pronunciation. That is just something that my brain latches onto. And so when I see it done wrong or, things like that, it just kind of irks me a little bit. So I did want to just kind of go through just some basic things. I want to point everyone's attention to the pronunciation of vowels. So obviously this is, some regular characters that you would see in Japanese, along with the English alphabet explanation of the way that it is said. But especially the vowels have specific pronunciations that are not necessarily typical of what we do. In the Western world, a lot of times vowels will have multiple sounds. English, the letter A could be pronounced with a long A or an ah, or even sometimes almost an O sound, an aw. But in Japanese, it's very specific. So A is pronounced ah, I is pronounced E, U is pronounced U, E is pronounced and O is pronounced O. Pretty pretty easy. So, when you look down here, it's pretty easy to figure this out. Wa, ra, ya, ma, wo, ro, yo, mo, re, me, he, ne, ru, you, mu, fu, re, me, he. Where it gets interesting is when they combine.
Like the
And
one
that
in the middle. The one in the middle appears to be F-U.
Well, yes. But like when they combine vowels, often they can produce. That's when they produce different sounds, and it might not be what you would assume with a Western brain they would be. So, like, if you put A and I together, well, you think about how those sound separately. Ah, e, ah, e, I, I. So you put those together, it makes a long I sound. You put E and I together, A. That's how you get the long A sound. I just wanted to point that out because it is important to note in this episode going forward. Class is now dismissed. Thank
you, Mr. Johnson.
You're welcome.
So speaking of which, in Japanese pronunciation, how do you said a single A is pronounced like ah, right? More or less. All right. How is A's in a row pronounced?
That is something that I have actually not seen. That I was about to say that is more. That might be more. Again, some of this might be rooted in Asian things outside of Japanese, but I will say from what I have noticed, it often follows mostly the same rules. Mm-hmm. But yes, I would assume even with the double A that it would still more come out like ah. Mm-hmm. Ah. And in fact, I would think Aang is how you would probably pronounce his name rather than Aang.
Yeah.
But again, some of these I'm not that because really I guess you could spell it EING, but who in the Western canon is in the Western world is going to pronounce that Aang?
Yeah, everybody's going to call it Aang.
Exactly.
Especially since there's Ein from Cowboy Bebop that's spelled EIN.
Right. Yeah.
No, I mean, that was one of my minor reactions to the movie was just like, oh, it's like, that sounds honestly right. I know it's the movie. We hate everything about the movie, but doggone it, that sounds right to my ear.
And like I said, in that breakdown of the movie, a lot of those pronunciations I really don't have a problem with. Yeah. My problem with them was that they decided to change all of them, which you should have known was immediately going to make the fan base revolt.
Oh, sure.
You want to teach them a little bit? Teach them a little bit. Don't change everything.
Yes.
There's Aang and the Avatar and Sokka.
Avatar. Did I make that point before about like in the Venom trailers when they referred to the symbiote?
Yeah.
Like they fixed that by the time the movie came out. It's like, nope, that was too dumb. We can't accommodate that.
Yeah. But yeah, so let us kind of go ahead and let's get into this episode today. We are today talking about the third episode of this season. It is titled Return to Omashu, and it was directed by Ethan Spalding and written by Elizabeth Welch. And it premiered April 7th, 2006. And the basic idea of this episode, as we saw in the last episode, they come up and they see that Omashu has basically been taken over by the Fire Nation. And so Aang in this episode is compelled to check on his friend. He's compelled to make sure that Bumi is okay. And, also kind of, look after the people of Omashu. That's kind of a nice extra extra on top, but that doesn't seem to be the goal, at least at first. But and then also on the villain side of things, Azula decides to kind of make her search party a bit more sleek and small, and recruit some friends. But we haven't really done this in a while. But what did you guys overall thoughts of this episode?
There was a lot going on in this episode.
There is, but it doesn't feel overpacked. Like I was watching this before we came on, and you're right. There does seem to be a lot going on, but I think they handle it very well for a 22-minute episode.
I always forget this is the one where Ty Lee is introduced because I always, for some reason, I always think the Pentapox episode and the Ty Lee episode, I always think are two different ones, but it's the same one.
Sure.
Yeah. I was going to say, it didn't feel too overpacked to me, partly because like it took a break for a several-minute chase sequence in the middle of the episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it does very well introducing several elements while at the same time, because I think they were very smart to introduce new characters at the same time that we are on the search for an old one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like the way they introduce May and Ty Lee because they're introduced as they seem like nice people, like they're friends with Azula, but at the same time, it's like, okay.
Am I confused about which one's May? How's her name again?
We're gonna get to that in a little bit.
Honestly, I didn't clock her name watching the episode.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now. So,
but yeah, May is the one who is already in Omashu. Her dad's the new governor.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because I didn't. To be honest, my reaction to her was Ty Lee seemed perfectly cute and nice doing her circus bit and whatnot. My reaction to.
I was about to say, when you say they seem like nice people, I'm like,
she just seems like your average goth girl.
But May, I mean,
she's just your emo goth girl.
They seem stoic like a henchman, honestly.
Yeah. That gets explained later on.
To be honest, there's a scene in. I mean, let's just jump into it, because I think that the biggest thing in this episode is the introduction of both May and Ty Lee, and let's just get it out of the way. May's name is spelled wrong because it is spelled M-A-I, which would mean that it is pronounced my, but they say it May.
I got very confused the first time I saw it written out. I was like, wait, well then who's my? I don't know who my is.
Again, if you wanted to call her May, there is a way to spell that.
Yes, M-E-I.
I do wonder, because I will say, to Western eyes, I would understand why they would look at that and say May. I know a kid whose name is spelled J-A-I, and it's pronounced J. But he is not, East Asian. So whatever. But with a character that has those roots there, you would assume that would be the pronunciation. And yes, we have said it before. There are very few things in this world that they do pronounce correctly. But that to me is the one that irks me the most, because it's like there was a way to spell that and you just intentionally.
I think because I've seen May spelled M-E-I tons of times on shows.
Yeah. It is, and you have to wonder if maybe they had intended her name to be Mai, and then everybody just started saying May because that's the way it looked to Western eyes. But if that's if that's the case, then just change the way the character's name is spelled. But instead, they stuck with it, I will say though, honestly, I think May sounds better as a name than Mai.
Yeah,
but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, in English, my does just sound like a pronoun.
Yeah. I mean, again, that is, with Western ears, Western eyes, all of this. But the show was premiering on Nickelodeon.
Yes.
So, although now that I think about it, I'm like, I feel like I have heard of characters in like anime or something called things like Mai.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not specifically Mai, but something like akin to that.
Yeah. So we're all in agreement. It should be Mai and Aang and Iroh.
I'm not gonna co-sign that, honestly. But yeah. So there's that. But we are introduced to these characters, and at least on the face, they are very kind of two-dimensional. Like they have like Ty Lee is happy and perky, and that is her character. There's a little bit more to it that we'll discover later on, and even a little bit in this episode towards the end, because you see her and you wouldn't assume that she's a badass that can beat benders, but she has that capability. And then you've got May, who in my headcanon it's spelled correctly, who is basically Batman if he were more apathetic. If Batman were basically a teenage girl who just couldn't give a shit, but occasionally just wanted to beat people up. Yeah, that's May.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But yeah, so we're introduced to these characters, and yes, like I said, they're very kind of two-dimensional, but they're also instantly interesting. I'm already on board to see these three as a group, because you've got Azula, who we have already revealed is a badass villain, not afraid to step on your toes. She's not afraid. She is not bothered by your feelings, in any way, shape, or form. She is cold. She's got a job. She's going to do it. Then you've got Ty Lee, who is seemingly the opposite, rainbows and hugs and kisses and kittens. I will say the thing that I find interesting about Ty Lee is that I think that she's the type of character that a lot of people would assume is airheaded or less intelligent. But honestly, aside from just the pleasant demeanor, she never presents herself in that way. And in fact, there are circumstances later where we see that she is very intelligent in specific ways, but she just happens to have a positive outlook on life. But very often that is accompanying characters of lower intelligence. I was just thinking about that when I was thinking about the character, and I'm like, yeah, I guess that's kind of true of stereotypes. But when you really think about Ty Lee, I don't think of her that way at all.
When it comes to Ty Lee at all,
no. And then obviously you've got May, who just couldn't give a shit about anything. But we get to fight people. Cool. Let's do it. So yeah, I'm really on board for this team coming together. Although I will say, when we first meet Ty Lee, she seems to be happy in this circus environment. Obviously, May is more than happy to join Azula because she's just bored wherever she is. But Ty Lee seems to be happy. And Azula's way of basically getting her to join is just like, cool, I'm going to come see your show, and I'm going to make this thing you love absolutely miserable. I'm just like, jeez. Azula, this is how you treat your friends?
Dang, Azula, her aura has never been pinker. Why are you taking that from her?
Well, and it's like, when after the scene where, she makes her stunt show, just extremely unpleasant. And Ty Lee decides, you know what? I've decided that I'm going to go with you. Ty Lee makes it seem like it's her decision and things like that. But I wonder if she genuinely was manipulated by Azula, or if she's just like, you know what? I'm going to do what Azula wants, because otherwise she's just going to keep making my life miserable. Like, what do you guys do? You guys have any thoughts about which one that is?
I take it as that she was manipulated just because she's really into like auras and everything. And the way she said that the universe has made it clear that I need a new direction. It's like, okay, well, this horrible thing happened, and Azula has given me this opportunity at the same time that this awful thing just happened to her. So like I could see where she would want to go with Azula.
I mean, I would say I think that's also possibly a way of covering as well.
True.
But
I frankly just assumed that she was threatened into doing it and just was playing nice for the sake of not having her life threatened again.
And that's valid.
There you go. Yeah.
It honestly did not occur to me to read it any other way.
Sure.
Frankly, just hearing y'all talk about your enthusiasm for these two characters, especially May, gives me hope for both of them. Ty Lee, at least watching this, it's like, oh, clearly she's being set up. I look forward to seeing where her arc goes from, being a cheerful circus performer to being, sidekick to a villainous.
Yeah.
But May,
because she like, that is the friendship that I'm like, how did this happen?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What they clearly have a past together. She's clearly happy to see Azula when she shows up, and but also Azula's not afraid to threaten her, to drag her along. And
my guess is because Ty Lee is so incredibly talented, Azula was like, "I'm going to find a way to make this."
Yeah, well,
and she befriended Ty Lee
because Ty Lee, on the opposite end, because Ty Lee has such a positive outlook. I think she chooses to see the best in Azula, even though that seems to be really hard to do.
But no, hearing y'all's enthusiasm really gives me hope for May, because she made very little. I mean, she was a fine fighter in this episode, but personality-wise, she did not make an impression on me in this episode.
She has a really good arc.
I was about to say,
you're telling me she's going to, that gives me hope, because in this episode, she was a memorable lackey. Like, if she had disappeared after this episode and didn't show up for another 8 episodes, that would not have surprised me. That she'd show up like 3 times a season. But
I mean, definitely in this episode, like, the main character trait she has is apathetic. She just doesn't care. She's in the mood for something interesting. And that's really kind of the defining character trait that she has. But you will be surprised how they use that, and how well-rounded that somehow becomes. But enough foreshadowing. Let's talk a bit about the other side of this story, because we have Aang, who is not wanting to accept that something might have happened to Bumi. In fact, among the first lines in this episode is Sokka is just like, well, let's just keep going. Let's find you a teacher somewhere else. And Aang's like, no, I have to make sure that I have to find Bumi. And Sokka is like, well, how do you know that he's not? And Aang won't even let him finish that sentence. He's just like, nope, that's not an option. That's good. And Sokka's covers. He's just like, somewhere else, not around. You can tell that Sokka's like, okay, you don't want me to say the D word. Gotcha. It joined a circus. Yeah, I don't know.
Since we established a few episodes after the first Omashu episode with the comet, like that the whole arc of this show takes place over this series, takes place over like 3 or 4 months, I guess, something like that.
I would say it could
like 8
be
months.
up to a year.
Up to a year.
9 months to a year, I would say.
Fair enough. How long has it been since the last time they were in Omashu? Ballpark.
Last time they were in Omashu, I say at least 6 months.
Oh, so it's been 6 months since the first Omashu episode. So the rest of the series takes place over like 3 months.
3 to 6.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. It gives me a bit better big picture.
I mean, I will say there are episodes coming up that are going to, push you're going to realize there's not a whole lot of time.
Oh, sure. No, I can understand.
From this point.
We're going to move faster, once, the ball gets rolling with Azula and all that than we were when we're just going to ride elephant seals and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. But so, Aang is intent on going. He finds them a sewer to go through. And I will say, nobody seems to ever think about Sokka in these situations because they go into the sewer and Aang immediately starts bending the stuff out of his way. Katara starts bending the stuff out of his way. And Sokka, who they all decided should go last, apparently, just gets all of it right in his face. So that by the time he comes out of the sewer, he is a giant sludge monster.
Yep.
And, to which, I mean, I get that they quickly water and airbend him clean, but I'm like, dude, if I'm Sokka, I'm looking for the nearest bath, shower, whatever. Because I've just been not only in a sewer, but actively had sewage thrown on top of me.
I would be mad, and I would be using some inappropriate language that is not suitable
it's like,
for
guys,
Nickelodeon.
Next time, I hide behind one of the benders. Do not bend stuff on top of me.
I imagine there's some no prize explanation for this, but in the moment, one little thing that annoyed me is the fact that they're going up the sewer pipe where sewage is flowing down this thing. But before they went in, it was capped. So, what insane sewer system was capped on the other end to not let any sewage out?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but they're wading through rivers of sewage, come out on the other end, and he gets all the stuff off of him, but he still has these two tiny little purple octopus-looking things that Aang calls a pentapus. And he easily just, Sokka starts freaking out, but he easily gets them off by just rubbing them a little bit. They just pop up and they take them off, no problem. They do have the side effect of leaving little, sucker marks on his face, which they are able then later, when they are caught by some guards from the Fire Nation, they're able to claim is a disease called pentapox.
I mean, that's believable. I can imagine that a creature that lives in sewage might be disease-ridden.
Yeah. Well, and also, I will say, later on, they decide to stick these things on everyone to make the pentapox epidemic, believable. But I'm like, is there a cleaner place to get them besides the sewer? Because we're reaching in the sewer and putting something from there on my face. I'm saying, thank you. I will take my chances with the Fire Nation.
Yep. I do kind of appreciate the sort of the undercurrent there of just government ignorance that you have in I don't know if you Chernobyl is an example of this, where you have certain fascist governments where people don't want to question their higher ups. It's this is a real thing. I'm not gonna play it safe on this.
Yeah, what I love is every time they're like pentapox, at least one person is like, I think I've heard of that.
That's a thing. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. Yeah.
Honestly, it sounds believable. If all of a sudden I saw on the news outbreak of pentapox, I'd be like,
well, I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently it's a thing.
They called it. It's real.
Yep.
It's like a Petricite from Ernest Goes to Camp.
Oh, Camp? Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I believe that's a real mineral that fuels the space program. Pentapox. pox.
Yeah.
I believe that is a real, flesh-eating disease or whatever.
It has a real sound to it in the way that like unobtainium does not sound like.
No.
Yes.
No. Again, why the blue
Avatar.
people Avatar didn't just use Petricite? I still don't know to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would tell us that the Avatar and Ernest movies take place in the same universe.
Which, who would want to live in that world? But yeah. So, like I said, they do end up later on giving people a face full of sewage, to make the epidemic believable. But, before we get there, can we just talk about Aang's really shitty disguise in this episode? Because he just walks around wearing, I guess it's part of his robes or something, but just a hat to cover specifically the front of the arrow. Because in this scene, this is a screenshot from when the soldiers pull Sokka up. And what they don't notice, though, is the giant blue stripe tattoo coming out of the kid's head. No questions about that? No?
I mean, it's been how many decades since the Airbender's been around? Like, these are just laggy.
But again, it is now known far and wide that the Avatar is back. He is an Airbender. You would think that these Fire Nation soldiers would be on, yes, pick on the soldiers, that's silly. But also Aang, he's like, I'm just going to wear this hat. I'm not going to stop airbending or anything, but nobody will know it's me.
No, I think the contrast here is really should be with how much Aang disguised himself the first time they came to Omashu. Like, he put effort into that one. This time, it's like, I'm just going to wear a hat.
Battle Apsicopolis!
Yes.
Where'd he go?
We could have had his return.
Yes! The return of Pimpatolopsicopolis.
Yes.
Oh. It's like Smith in the Earth Kingdom.
Yes.
But yeah, so, there are a lot of, very easy things that, Aang somehow doesn't get found out as the Avatar. Yep. They buy Pentapox. But, later on when they fake Pentapox and the entire kingdom is able to leave out the front gate, and then they accidentally kidnap the governor's son because he was chasing Momo.
This occurred to me, and maybe I'm forgetting something from last season. Is this the first time in this series that Momo has had a significant impact on the plot?
There was one where Momo went through and opened a.
True. Did he open something? I remember he created a shadow when they were in the fire temple.
Yeah, I was about to say honestly, I would argue that was more consequential even than because yes, there is kind of the exchange, but it was all accidental. So it's like, and it's not like anything really came of it.
But no, but basically and I suppose not so much like a plot purpose. Like, this is the first time we had Momo just have his own scene for 3 minutes or something here with that kid.
There was the episode where it was confirmed that Momo was a cat, and he kept bringing delusional Sokka and Katara just random shit, just crown.
The one
who knows where he stole it from.
Oh, that does sound familiar. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it's not often that we get a significant scene for Momo. But yeah,
I frequently watching it myself. It's wonders why is Momo here? Honestly, other than to be cute and be toyetic, but just he doesn't he's just sort of a superfluous member of the team. And here he played a role.
I will say though, even in just appearances, he's fun.
Oh yeah.
And so I enjoy him for
cartoon. I get why
that.
he's here. He's just like yeah. It was just interesting to see him suddenly play a role in the episode.
But I mean, you know, overall that subplot, like I was just like that was the one point where I was like, I could have done without this because, you know, it's basically the baby's name is TomTom. I literally wrote in my notes, TomTom's Day Out. That's what it feels.
Yeah.
That is what it is. That is.
Yeah. I would prefer if it was just Momo's Day Out. Like that sounds like fun. I'd watch that movie.
Yeah.
But TomTom's Day Out, that's a reboot I don't need. But yeah, you know, that's where we kind of get the convergence of these two plot lines with you know, excuse me, because May has already gone after, you know, them because she thought that they were trying to attack the family or whatever. But by this point, Azula, May, and Ty Lee are all there, and the idea was, it's like, well, hey, we accidentally have this baby, let's use him. So they propose an exchange for Bumi, because try as he might, you know, Aang went all over the place. I will say he did free Flopsy, who was enslaved, like
Flopsy.
turning something. I will say it's never revealed what that thing he was turning. Like, was he like an underground power station? We don't know.
How did Flopsy not break out of that, though? I mean, Flopsy's pretty powerful.
But yeah, I mean, but
was it a Simpsons or a Futurama episode where someone was turning a giant underground crank like that, and it turned out it was like turning a bakery display? Just like,
yeah, I would love to find out that he's like, you know, running a Ferris wheel or something, you know, just something ridiculous. But yes, Aang is able to free Flopsy, but they are not able to find Bumi. So, you know, they do this exchange. It goes awry because basically May sells out her brother. She's like, you know what? Yeah, my brother's not worth an Earth King. No, the deal's off. Again, May could give a crap about any of this.
Even my brother gets on my nerves.
Yes. So, you know, it breaks out into a fight. Which honestly, what I love about this fight is that up to this point, with the exception of occasionally we'll see some fun stuff from Sokka, and we did see you know, Jet with his swords. The majority of the fights in this series have been bending fights. But now we see, because, you know, something that we haven't mentioned, neither May or Ty Lee are firebenders. They're both just extremely gifted, you know, athletes and fighters, you know, who are able to hold their own against benders. May, you know, like I said, she's like the apathetic version of Batman. She just, you know, shoots these like darts seemingly just straight out of her fingers, but you imagine that she's like finding them somewhere on her person. I mean, she just walks around.
I'm just imagining her just getting ready. It's like, let me pack my daggers.
Exactly. Yeah, just you know, like you do. Normal getting ready. Prep, you know, wash your face, you know, pack your daggers.
In case I get bored, I'll have a dagger I can play with.
Honestly, I would not be at all. What I would love for the live action May when they get there to season 2 is just to randomly see her like playing with a knife. You know, just like, you know, randomly, you know, cutting grass, you know, just, you know, sharpening, you know, just to like keep herself occupied. But
doing a Steve McQueen thing, just sitting in a room, just bouncing a knife off 2 walls and catching it again. Just
There you go. Without really even looking.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
Catching a knife bare hand. Yeah.
We heard that they kind of did that in the last like Suicide Squad movies. So
yeah.
But I don't think he did it with a knife though.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah. With a knife.
Yeah. But yeah, so it breaks out into a fight. Like I said, we get some really cool sequences between non-benders. And what I find the most interesting, because it's the first time that it's been introduced, is that we are introduced to the fact that Ty Lee is not only extremely acrobatic, but she has the ability to land strikes, which I believe did they specifically call it chi blocking?
Chi blocking. Yeah.
Did they call it that in this episode?
I don't know if they mentioned it in this episode or not, but
Lauren, do you remember hearing that term in this episode?
I feel like someone mentioned chi at some point.
Okay. Yeah. Basically what she is doing is she's hitting pressure points that block the chi, which basically makes your bending unusable. And she had it does eventually wear off, like after an hour or so, but you know, it is because she is able to block Katara's chi to the point that Katara is unable to water bend, which is, you know, mind-boggling. It's crazy. But you know, so we're getting these bits, you know, these really fun action sequences. You know, eventually, you know, I would say that Aang and the gang more escape than come out victorious, but they are able to escape, or at least get away from the girls far enough that they're not pursuing them anymore. And Aang gets to eventually have a conversation with Bumi. Because something that we didn't say is that, you know, they were talking to the resistance of the Earth Kingdom, and it was revealed to them that Bumi, basically on the day of the invasion, they asked, well, what do you want to do? And Bumi decided, I'm going to do nothing. You know, I might be imagining this, but I feel like there was a snort in there, like, you know, nothing. You know, it just sounds right for Bumi. But
perfectly in character for him too. It didn't surprise me at all. Obviously,
no.
Later
well,
on,
and also,
but it does sort of create the question, and this is kind of implicit in the whole flashback scenario. So we're going to see this like 5-second clip of Bumi saying nothing. Then we cut back to present, where all of like his staff, his inferiors or whatever, the generals, whoever, are all like annoyed with him and upset with him because they don't know what he did. Which means that after he told them nothing, he didn't bother to explain anything to them, which honestly doesn't seem in character. Like if he's gonna,
honestly though, it does, because remember
Bumi.
the episode that we watched. He made Aang figure it out.
That's because he was testing Aang. He's not going to be testing the people he's asking to, like, while he's surrendering to the enemy.
I'm not saying that is a good leader, but I think Bumi is much more about. Yeah, I think that Bumi is more about being mysterious and, I mean, smart, but also I don't think he's typically the type of person that explains himself. And I will say, I think also part of that was that I think, and they don't explicitly say this, but I do imagine that part of his plan was, we're not going to do anything. Let's make the people safe. I'm not going to explain to you why we're just making the people safe, but let's just make the people safe. But I think that maybe there were other things that took precedent over explaining why.
But even if he doesn't explain, even if he doesn't give a detailed explanation why, he still at least tells his second in command, it's like, I know what I'm doing here. I'm saying I'm doing nothing for a reason. You know?
Well, he might have said exactly that, but the guy was like, but I don't see it.
Yeah.
And just didn't feel like sharing that part. You know?
Bumi probably has in his head, I have a reason for what I'm doing, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, Aang even says, you know, at this, there really is no point in fighting back because you are outmatched.
Yep.
The smart thing to do here is to run. Let's go somewhere else. So I think that ultimately that's the reason that Bumi made the decision.
Bumi would tell his people, like, I'm going to do nothing. Here's the plan. I'm going to surrender. Y'all escape. That's what
I don't think that he's going to explain a plan. Bumi at no point until the very end of the last episode did he ever explain anything.
But I don't think
that's his.
They didn't even know who he was. He was explicitly testing them.
I'm not saying that he shouldn't have. I'm just saying I don't find that out of character for Bumi. I really don't.
And we can disagree on that. I think the reason that's structured that way here is obvious is because the episode depends on the misunderstanding. And it's structurally built that way, and so that's why Bumi didn't explain.
And like you said, maybe he said something enigmatic like, "I have a plan."
Yeah,
but the guy was like, "We're still under Fire Nation control, so your plan sucks." Which I get it, but again, Bumi probably realized that fighting them was pointless. Let's conserve our energy, which is what he tells Aang later. The whole idea is let's be neutral, let's pick our spots, because Aang is there specifically to break him out. And what I love is that we get Bumi in this giant metal thing, and the first thing that popped into my head when I saw this is they got the king in a box.
Oh my god.
But what's crazy about this is
I'll ask later about that because I don't know.
It's a reference to a Lonely Island song. We'll just leave it there.
Oh, it's right. Oh, that okay. All right.
Yeah. But they've got every extremity of Bumi covered, and he's still able to earthbend with his face.
No, he's a powerful guy.
Yeah, he's crazy. But he explains to Aang, I need to stay here. You can't take me. There's a reason that I'm here. There's a reason that I did what I did when I did it. This is where I need to be. And he earthbends himself back up the slide.
Yeah.
Back into captivity.
It feels like it might be a bad idea since it's sort of going to hint to the folks back up at the top. It's like that he can do this, but
I'm sure that he's not going to bend in front of them. He's probably just going to represent himself in a place where they can recapture him.
Yeah. Do you suppose they're letting him in and out of that box? That the box was just there, like to transport him as a captive? Because otherwise, it's nasty inside that box.
I will say that. Every time we see him after this, he's in that box. And honestly, they are right to fear, him because, he's able to bend with just his face. Yeah. So I honestly don't think that they are letting him out. So it's probably pretty nasty in there.
You just put him in a metal room. In the same way you put like Magneto in like a glass room, you put Bumi in a metal room. He doesn't have to be like in a metal coffin. But I don't know.
They didn't have a metal room. They just had the metal coffin.
They got lots of metal. They can do all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And we get Bumi giving them some instruction on how to on the what do you say, 85 different jings or something like that.
Jin, and apparently it's revealed that Momo is a Jin master.
Yes, that's right.
He has mastered several different forms of Jin.
That's the next spin-off after Legend of Korra is Momo, Jin Master.
Momo, Jin Master. Yes. All right. Well, is there anything else about this episode that we specifically wanted to touch on?
I was thinking a minute ago when you were talking about the fight scene. Mm-hmm. I kind of found myself in and out of it a little bit. And what I realized, and this may not be a great omen for the show going forward, to be honest, is I find myself much more engaged by the fight sequences when they don't involve bending. Because just watching people just psychokinetically throw stuff at each other, it's like, that to me, that gets old fast. But
I mean, you know, let's think about the fights that we've really gone on about. The jet fight, the fight with Zuko as the blue spirit when he's not firebending.
Yeah.
I will say, I think it's more interesting when we have benders versus non-benders, or at least a non-bender element in the fight.
No, true. That still works. Yeah.
I think
we saw May throwing knives, and Katara was still using her powers to like move boards in the way and stuff like that. Yeah.
I also think though that part of that, I think that we're gonna find more interesting fights as we go on.
Yeah, because
I do remember Azula being a very interesting fighter to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Do you concur with my take there, Amanda?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so I mean, I will say I do find that but to be honest, I don't know, outside of the first episode with the confrontation between Aang and Zuko, and then the last episode with Zuko and Katara, we haven't had a whole lot of bender on bender fights.
Yeah.
So as well. So yeah.
But hopefully we don't have any going forward. So
we'll see. We'll see.
Yep.
Maybe they'll be more compelling this time.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anything else before we move on to segments?
I wrote this down. Since this we saw a somewhat different depiction of Azula when she's dealing with other people and something in that, and how she was approaching I don't know, to some extent, the people of Omashu and the people that she was having to deal with. And the contrast, I was, at least me, seeing a little more in this episode than we saw back in the pilot, is one of the distinctions between Zuko and her is that they're both Fire Nation. They're both the villains in this series. Zuko hasn't really been softened up till this point, really. No. We saw a little bit of that the other week, but still not much. But the difference that the show is still drawing pretty starkly between them, I see, is that Zuko's bad. He believes in the primacy of the Fire Nation and in their agenda and in being the rulers and whatnot. And his whole agenda, both in finding the Avatar and in pleasing his father, is all tied up in his pride.
Yes, exactly.
Zuko's villainy is all tied up is just a very proud individual and trying to do that. What he's not, and what Azula appears to be, is cruel.
Yeah. Azula is emotionless. Like you can't appeal to Azula's better nature.
And the thing, I wouldn't even say she's emotionless. Like she takes pleasure out of people hurting. It seems to me. Like so. Yeah.
She's much colder. Yeah.
She's much colder, but she's not stoic in the same way May is. Like she clearly likes watching people suffer.
Right. I mean, I will say, compared to Zuko, she's emotionless, because Zuko is all emotion.
Oh no,
Zuko is a raw nerve of emotion. Whereas Azula is much more cold and calculating, and emotion doesn't really play into it.
Yes. Funnily enough, yes, Zuko is more fiery. But Azula is colder in her approach. But no, like you hear people saying politically, like the cruelty is the point. It's like, nope, Azula very much subscribes to that. if it requires hurting someone. Even if it doesn't require hurting someone, let's hurt someone just for the fun of it. Really.
Yeah. She is ruthless. She is without ruth. There's no.
So I like that distinction between our villains here as we move forward, and it makes it easier, I imagine, as we go forward for Zuko to have his redemption arc when our new villain is clearly a worse ethically person than he is.
Right.
So yeah.
All right. Well, then let us move forward into our. If I can get it, there we go. My Cabbages moment.
My Cabbages!
which is, of course, the part of the episode where we discuss our favorite or most interesting scene for the episode. So, Lauren, what is your My Cabbages moment?
I'm going to go with that final interaction there between Bumi and Aang, as Bumi reveals that he actually can earthbend while he's in his metal coffin of doom there, and has a little conversation with Aang about trying to teach him a little bit about earthbending.
Yeah, because what I love about that scene is that even while he's telling him, Aang, I can't be your teacher, he's teaching him something.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not going to be your earthbending teacher, but I am going to teach you why I'm not going to be your earthbending teacher.
You're still getting a free lesson before you check out. Yeah.
And something that I didn't mention, which is important to point out, is he tells him the type of teacher that he should be looking for. Someone who has mastered neutral gen, who listens and waits. Someone who, pays attention to not just what they see, but who doesn't just react, but who has patience. And that's important. All right. Amanda, what is your My Cabbages moment?
The introduction of Ty Lee at the circus.
That's a good one. Yeah. A fun character that we're gonna see even more interesting. Like I said, I think out of the two, she is easily the most dynamic in this episode between May and Ty Lee. I think May is interesting as just kind of a badass, and while at the same time being completely apathetic. But Ty Lee, is kind of a dichotomy in a person.
Because Ty Lee shows you can be a badass but still be adorable.
Yeah, exactly. Like she, is extremely joyful and pleasant, but she's friends with Azula and she can block chi. It's like, wow, okay. Yeah, there's more to this person than you would assume, just, on the face of it.
And like I was saying a minute ago, I did enjoy that circus scene for what it told us about Azula, and not just her either, but just like watching the interaction between her and her right-hand man there, who was clearly not super comfortable with what she was asking him to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, the ringmaster, that whole scene that she's like, why don't you drop the nets? And he's like, well, the performers. He's like, I'm looking out for my people. I don't want OSHA down my on my neck. Come on. And she's like, why don't you set it on fire? And he's like, okay, I guess we can do that.
It just shows how scared everyone is of Azula. Just everybody.
Well, because that whole performance was just for her. She was the only one there. But yeah, all right. So My Cabbages moment, I'm actually gonna concur with Lauren. My favorite scene was also the bit with Bumi and Aang at the end, for all the reasons that I said before, because he's telling him why he chose not to defend the city, and also we get to see a glimpse, even though we're not going to get to see Bumi actually as Aang's teacher. We're getting to see a bit of Bumi teaching Aang, and it's like, oh, I love that. I would have loved to see more, but I also get why we're not getting it. But yeah. All right. Next is the Mako Award. This is, of course, our favorite or most interesting character in the episode. So, Amanda, who gets your Mako Award?
Ty Lee.
You're a big Ty Lee.
I love Ty Lee.
I can tell. Yeah.
Like, I like May too. Like, I like both of them, but I freaking love Ty Lee.
All right. Lauren.
I mean, from the moment he came on screen, TomTom really just grabbed me.
I love TomTom. He's so cute.
Not TomTom.
Oh, no. Yeah. TomTom's Day Out.
Yeah.
Coming soon to theaters near you.
No, it's Bumi again, honestly. I was glad to see him again. And I was watching a series of videos the other day from the YouTube channel Just Right, with a W, who did a 3-part series about the Avatar movie. And so I was watching his reaction to that. And one of the points he made, and this episode demonstrates why, and
Yeah.
he was correct about this, is that you're trying to make a movie, you need to dump a lot of exposition. And the movie puts a bunch of that exposition in Katara's mouth for some reason, which makes her just boring. And
I mean, I will say the show does that a lot.
Yeah. But it
doesn't help in the movie because she's one of the least experienced actors among them. So yeah.
And also you have to dump a lot of exposition in that movie in a fairly short amount of time.
Yeah.
As you suggested, what you need if you want to do an exposition dump in a movie like this and explain a world is you need someone who's like fun and charismatic to do it. And he compared it to like you hire Christopher Lloyd to give you like a bunch of exposition in Back to the Future because he's just interesting to watch. He's fun to do this.
Well, and it doesn't just feel like exposition dump.
Exactly. It doesn't feel like exposition. He at one point, I think in the same video talked about like in Terminator, Kyle Reese is able to like dump a bunch of stuff because it's in an action sequence.
Yes.
Like, and you stop thinking about like its exposition because they're doing during a chase sequence.
Right.
But he made the rhetorical observation of, okay, you need a charismatic person to drop all this exposition. Who could you use in the Avatar universe? Bumi. Bumi would have been the ideal person to just sort of explain how this world works. Because he's just a goofy, fun character, and you would enjoy watching him regardless of what he's talking about. And
Bumi's not in the last Airbender.
That's the point. Is the movie just not only did not use him for that, the movie didn't use him at all. No. Which is one of the mistakes it made.
Yeah, they don't bring in Jet. They do bring a very small cameo of what's his name? Earthbending kid.
Haru.
Haru. Yeah, which again we didn't need that.
Not the real Haru.
No.
But no, that video is making a point of the value that that Bumi could bring to that production, and Bumi bring value here again. We see him. He's once again, even though we don't get nothing more than his face, he is still charismatic and interesting, and is interesting to listen to. Again, basically as he drops exposition about earthbending.
Yeah, he's a talking box in this episode.
Yeah.
No. So I find it very interesting that you guys Scene and Mako Award were very, in unison and on brand. I'm gonna zag because this time I'm actually going with Amanda. I'm going with Ty Lee for this episode. While I did definitely enjoy Bumi, I really enjoyed kind of, like I said, Ty Lee on her face seems like a very, bubbly, joyful, but also flighty, silly, stereotypically stupid character. But even in one episode, if you pay attention, you realize, oh no, this is not the typical stereotype of what you expect from this character. This girl has levels, and it's only the first episode. We're already just in the way that she acts, finding contradictions of what we expect. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm interested to see more from this character. So yeah, I think that it was an interesting way to bring in this character and just a fun character to introduce overall. But yeah, let's go ahead now and let us rate this episode on the Avatar State Meter. This is, of course, we can rate it anywhere from 1 to 5, 5 being the best, the show at full power, 1 being the worst, could deal the show a fatal blow. Obviously, in the last episode, Amanda gave that a 5. So I'm curious, Amanda, where would you put this episode?
I'll give it a solid 4.
Okay. All right. Just a 4. All right. Lauren?
I've gone back and forth a little bit on this, especially as we go forward in the series, having to sort of gauge how I want the scale to work.
Sure.
And
I never think about it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this number sounds good.
Yeah.
That's kind of like me.
I think we 3 on this scale, I guess, is sort of average. It's just sort of it does everything fine,
yeah,
but doesn't do anything super exceptional. And so if I'm going to use that as my marker, that's where I put it, is 3. It's
3?
like, it did some stuff. It moved the plot forward, but
sure.
What y'all clearly love the most about it, I hope I will appreciate in retrospect when I see more of these characters.
Sure.
But it feels like that hindsight will help somewhat.
I will say I'm very interested in hearing how you saw these characters, because I think it's really hard for Amanda and I to divorce what
absolutely.
we know of these characters by seeing them.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of characters introduced in this season that you honestly, when you start to rewatch, forget that they don't come in until season 2, because they feel like so much part of the show.
Oh, I mean, this was a problem. The first show that comes to mind, this was a problem when I watched The Wire years ago, because The Wire introduced like a bunch of characters early in the season. It's like, and you don't realize who's going to live and who's going to die and who's going to be important until like episodes, seasons later.
Yeah.
And so, like if you were sitting here telling me it's like TomTom's going to be super important.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess so. I look forward to it.
Because... Yeah, actually, TomTom is the one that defeats the Fire Lord, not Aang.
Oh.
He's the key to all of it.
He is. It's just in that groundwork here in this episode. There.
Yeah. I am also going to give this a 4, because I honestly think that this episode is more than average, because we are introducing 2 new characters in a dynamic way, while at the same time, like I said at the beginning, I think it's very interesting that we're introducing 2 new characters on one side, while on the other side, we're going to find a beloved character. So, we've kind of got this, kind of weaving back and forth, kind of push and pull going on. And I found that a good match for these 2 storylines here. I think it's a good solid 4. Plus, the fun things with like the pentapox and all that kind of good stuff. I think it's a good solid episode. All right. I will say with giving it a 3, Lauren, I'm guessing this is not your new favorite show.
I'm afraid not. No.
Yeah. But it's still, is it rising in the ranks still?
This was down from the previous score I gave.
True.
So it has not risen since last episode.
Okay. All right. Well, I think it is then time to go ahead and let people know how you can get into contact with us. You can contact me at the Flying Cow Pod at Gmail. At the Flying Cow Pod on Twitter and Instagram. You can also email at the Flying Cow Pod at gmail.com. Make sure to check out all of our other shows. Check out the patreon.com/theflyingcow. Lots of stuff going on there. Laura and Amanda, let people know what's going on.
You can find me. Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You started.
Sorry, I was going in the order. I was just always going in. All right, sorry. You can find me on socials at Amanda Van Heil. You can find me on Twitch at Panda Princessa, and you can find me hosting Zelda Weekly on Zelda Universe TV on YouTube.
And you can find me on Twitter at Lauren Collins. If you're in the Atlanta area around this time this episode drops, I think, or a little before, I'll be in Lend Me a Tenor, farce at Act 3 Productions up in Sandy Springs. If you're in the Metro Atlanta area, come see me do comedy on stage.
There you go. Well, with that, we will be back next time with episode number 4, The Swamp. Yeah. But until that time, moo.
Moo.